Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now today we're testing Cyberpunk 2077 with the GTX 1630, one of the weakest Nvidia GPUs you can buy, or one of the weakest modern GPUs you can buy, I should say. Now for a little bit of context, the 1630, from my testing in the past anyway, performs very similar to a 1050 Ti in a lot of scenarios, and that should give you some idea of how capable this card is. It's a 4GB GPU, GDDR6 VRAM. It has a 6-pin power connector, though it's only a 75-watt card, and in this test you'll see that it does consume less than that. I wanted to do an individual benchmark here. I want to do a few of them actually in between my bigger videos, just because they're a lot of fun to do and it should give you an idea of how certain games run on certain cards. You know, you've seen Zworms Gaming, for example, that sort of thing. Love those videos, by the way. So I thought we'd dive right in at the deep end, give this card a real challenge and expand on what it can do. So we'll start with the settings here. As you can imagine, no prizes for guessing the settings I've gone with. Absolute bottom of the barrel lowest settings. We have got resolution scaling off, so no FSR enabled just yet. Frame gen's also off. That'll be interesting. This recently got an update, so I think a few features were added. Performance seems to have changed a little bit for me on certain cards anyway. My 3050 6GB performed a bit better, I think, but we're not testing that today. We're testing this abomination. So we'll jump into the game and see what it can do, starting off with low at 1080p. Now I know I called this card an abomination, but the card itself, this palette version, I actually really like. I think it's a great looking card. Palette cards are always good in my opinion, the ones that I've used anyway. And as you can see here, it's doing an okay job of running Cyberpunk 2077 at, whoa, couldn't quite avoid him. Yeah, anyway, it's doing a decent job, 30 FPS plus at 1080p. Now, I've made the mistake of pairing it with an i9-14900K. I have it limited to 125 watts, so it's basically like an i7-14700K in terms of power. We're really making the best out of this card. Realistically, you're going to pair it with a weaker CPU, but this should give us an idea of what this is capable of at its maximum potential. And to be honest, if you pair the 1630 with an i3-12100, then the card is still going to be reaching its max potential in a lot of cases. Maybe some extremely CPU limited scenarios it may not be, but most of the time I'm pretty sure you can get away with it. So we'll just steal this car here, drive around the city a little bit. You can see the CPU power usage I'll touch on briefly. I have my i9 limited to 125 watts, it shouldn't exceed that. We also have 32 gigs of DDR5 6400, so real best case scenario for the 1630 here. As you can see, the card itself is clocked at 1845 megahertz. That seems to be the max that it boosts to. Runs nice and quiet, nice and cool as well. Where did these guys come from? Right, let's quickly dispatch these. I don't like that skull above their heads. Indicates to me that they're a lot higher level than I am. Pretty early on in the game here on the PC. I've played through it on the PS5, but yeah, not played so much on the PC, mainly for benchmarking, and videos like this give me more of a chance to actually enjoy the games that I buy. What an absolute pickle I'm in here. Can't get away from this lot. It's certainly giving our GPU a workout, which is exactly what we want. But yeah, so as I was saying, we're using less than 75 watts of power, a lot less. Some question why this needed a 6-pin PCIe connector at all, to be honest, but you know, I don't have the answers to that. All I have the answer to is the question, is this playable on this card? And the answer is yes, if you don't mind 30 plus FPS rather than 60 plus FPS. But what we'll do in a minute is play around with a few settings. FSR, for example, frame generation, if we can enable it, and see how that impacts things. In fact, I don't know what I'm talking about in a minute. I'll do it right now. So let's jump back into the menu. Not load game, we don't want that. Settings, let's see, resolution scaling, can we enable? Yeah, so we've got Intel XeSS, FSR 3 now. Okay, that'll be interesting. Let's enable that. FSR 3, we'll set that to quality mode, and FSR 3 sharpness, we'll leave that at 50. We'll leave frame gen off for now. This must have been one of the features they added in the new update. I'm not too up to date on the certain game updates, not like I used to be anyway, but FSR 3 quality here, 50% sharpness, everything else still on low, including the textures, of course. We'll re-enable the Oh wow, that's much better. The FPS overlay is re-enabled and now we're getting 42, 43 FPS. I will have the averages up on screen as I normally do. Have I escaped the enemies? No, I have not. They've chased me halfway across town. Right, we're going to deal with these properly. Let's. Actually, I don't want to get out the car. If I get out this car, I'm going to be absolutely destroyed. So I'm just going to try and lose them. Not like that. That wasn't any good. Oh, you can still see some pretty hefty drops here to the low 30s, but it's certainly more playable and there isn't much of a visual sacrifice. It's still looking nice and sharp, but let's switch to an older version of FSR and see how that changes things. So we'll jump back into the settings. This time we'll go with FSR 2.1 quality. I know this is going to be pretty hard to hit at least 60 FPS. We'll give it a try in a minute, but I'm just playing around with settings that feel comfortable at plus 30 FPS. Oh well, it's very similar, around 40 to 45 frames per second. What am I doing? My driving skills are awful. I'm glad I'm a better driver than this in the real world because otherwise I'd be in trouble. Although I did reverse into a car the other day, but we won't mention that. So anyway, I've said too much. Yeah, so 40 to 50 FPS now in this empty area. Looking out across the city, it does dip a little bit. I think you're probably best sticking to FSR 2.1 if you don't want to enable frame generation. Let's do that, in fact. Why have we got like 3 things we can select, but we can only select off, and there's 3 little notches here. I don't really understand. Never mind. Frame gen. Oh, really? Really? I have to restart? Do I? Do I, though? Can we just see if it works? Maybe we do. I think we probably have to restart. So I'm going to restart and then see if that actually helps. I don't know why I had to do that, but we'll try it. Okay, so I've restarted. We've gone with FSR 3. Frame gen is now working. We have balanced mode as well to try and up the frame rate a little bit. Now this can feel horrible if we're not getting a somewhat decent frame rate to start with, and we'll just test that theory. So in the game here, it feels pretty choppy. You know, we weren't getting a particularly decent frame rate to start with, and that's the thing with frame gen. We're sort of getting 60 plus fake frames, as some would like to call it, but this feels worse than playing it with, well, actually at native. When we were getting about 38, 39 frames, it felt a little better than this. Frame gen's just adding an extra level of motion sickness for me here. It doesn't really make things feel smoother. If we were getting, say, 60 FPS to start with and then we enabled frame gen, that's always where it's at its best. That would have probably felt absolutely fine, but this is not really what I would consider enjoyable here. I'd rather play at native res or just enable FSR or keep frame generation off, I think. Yeah, but you know, if you're looking for 60 plus FPS on paper, this is how you achieve it, but you're not really gaining anything in terms of a smoother experience. I think this is, whoops, sorry mate. Yeah, this is not all that great, but I mean, it's what I expected from this 4GB low-end GPU. Now though, I want to see what it takes to actually hit 60 plus legit FPS. Like, what do we need to do? What do we need to sacrifice in order to do that? I'm going to try and keep things at 1080p if I can. How do I throw a grenade? Oh, like that. Whoops. Let's just do that. Let's just do that before we restart the game. That didn't even do anything. Oh dear. Sorry, buddy. I've upset the police. Let's run away and restart the game. Okay, maybe we won't restart the game. We had to restart it to turn it on, but turning frame gen off didn't require a restart, which is, well, it's helpful for us, but surprising. So what we'll do now, we're getting about 40 FPS up here, which is nice. Why did I do that? What a stupid thing to do. Ah, tricked you though. You thought I was still up there, didn't you? Yeah, what we'll do, that was really stuttery, is go into the menu, see how low we need to go. What we're going to do then, FSR, I think 2.1 we'll stick with. FSR 3, let's go with FSR 3. Oh, no. Oh no, if we go with FSR 2, we can do ultra performance mode, and this may give us 60 plus FPS without... Yes, there we go. It's an absolute blurry mess. I'll begin the benchmark. Well, it's not too bad. You know, I've seen a lot worse. If we were running at native, say... What has happened here? What has happened to your doors? Is this the one I threw the grenade at? Yeah, if we were running at, say, like native 720p or below, 480p, whatever this is upscaling from, like 240 or 360p, I imagine at this point, then it would definitely look a lot worse. But on the 4GB 1630, well, what can I say? It's definitely more enjoyable like this, more enjoyable than it was with frame generation on. Anyway, this car's done. Let's get a different car. Let's exit. Let's get out. Sorry for blocking your path, sir. I'll just park that there for later. Yeah, when we're on foot as well, certainly feels a lot better. Definitely better like this than it was with frame gen on. That just turned into a bit of a stuttery mess, to be honest, on the 1630, the entry level 1630 from Nvidia. Not too bad in some cases, especially in those games. Now we're getting a free journey across the city. Whoops. Yeah, it's not too bad in those games that really do have those really intense FSR and upscaling options. Thank goodness for FSR. Even if it may give you a little bit of eye strain after a while, it's certainly handy if you have an older or lower end card and you want to get a somewhat playable frame rate from it. You don't mind a sacrifice in visuals. Like I say, this isn't too bad. FSR ultra performance here. To conclude, the 1630 Cyberpunk 2077 playable with some sacrifices if you want 60 FPS, well, a lot of sacrifices, but if you're happy with plus 30 and you've got a CPU that's up to the challenge, then you're going to be fine at native 1080p. That's all for this one. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.